Welcome to Beyond Co-Sell, the show where we get into exactly what drives success in the AWS ecosystem. No fluff, no partner speak, just honest conversations with the people who've built it, broken it, and figured out what works. I'm Andrew Morris, and today's guest is Nikolay, Principal Cloud Marketplace and Partnership Manager at NASN and previously Progress. At Progress, he took marketplace build sales from roughly $1 million to $10 million in about 2 years, building strategy across both AWS and Microsoft. Before that, he was on the distribution side at Incremental, which gives him a rare view of the ecosystem from both sides of the table. Nikolay is also someone I got to know when I interviewed him for a hyperscaler director role, and one of the things that stood out was how methodical he is about the mechanics of marketplace. He recently scored 75 out of 100 on his first AWS ACE opportunity registration, and then hit 80 a week later by systematically mapping his MEDPIC data into the ACE fields. As a result, that's turned a few heads on this show. Nikolay, welcome to Beyond Co-Sell. I've got a few questions for you today. So you took Progress's marketplace build sales from roughly 1 million to 10 million in about 2 years. So walk me through what actually had to change operationally to make that happen. And I don't really want to understand the strategic slide version, but the actual sequence and what was different about month one versus month 18.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. There isn't a single right answer on how to structure your work streams when you want to start engaging in cloud go-to-market as a company, but I'll tell you what it looked like for Progress. I suppose if you're a cloud native company, which is already tightly integrated with one of the hyperscalers, it's very easy to make that decision and it's predestined for you to go in that route. But I don't think that was necessarily the case with Progress. And just to give you some context, Progress Software is a 45-year-old company, about 1 billion ARR. And we had more than 10 different products which live in different spaces like digital experience, infrastructure software, databases, application and data software. And the first thing that we had to do was to do a product selection, right? To determine which of our products really make sense to be transacted through the marketplace. Are there any of our products that complemented the cloud ecosystem in any way?
Yep.
So if you have to narrow it down, infrastructure software, DevOps software, security software, I suppose that's where you want to start. So first we have to make a decision of where it made sense to focus on. And once we did that, then we have to do a lot of internal enablement about what is the marketplace, why would you want to transact through the marketplace, why would customers want to buy from the marketplace, and how to do it. Right? You need to get people on board, which is harder to be done than said.
Yeah. So I think the interesting thing around that, and that was really good. When you say we, who do you mean by we? Was it just yourself? Did you have to convince any senior management? Where did that initial drive come from?
So that came from me and from my direct manager, who basically said the marketplaces seem like they're to be evolving quite much lately. Why don't you take a look at that and see what's up with it? Does it make sense for us as a company to start transacting through the marketplaces? I started digging into that, and I found out they're becoming like the fastest growing channel in IE. And they're not only a transactional vehicle anymore, but they're a platform for collaboration. And there's so much more going on in the marketplaces. And I thought that it definitely makes sense for us to do as much business as possible through the marketplace. So that's how the whole thing started.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have to select the right products. And then we have to start talking to product, to engineering, to finance, and to sales to get a buy-in from all of them to help them understand why we want to sell from the marketplace and how can we do that.
Yeah.
Once that decision was made, and I see that it's always as a balancing act because nobody was fully on board throughout any of the time. So it's you push and pull. Then you have to select a third-party integrator platform. And I would highly recommend that if you want to sell through the marketplace, just go for one of the 3 PIs. It just doesn't make sense for you to be building and maintaining the listings yourself. So you have to shortlist the 3 PI, and then you need to create your listings. And after that, you need to make your listings meaningful. You need to enroll in all the right programs. And what I mean by that is when a customer is buying your listing from the marketplace, can they purchase it against their cloud commit? If you want somebody from the cloud field sellers to help you, are they going to get paid on that opportunity? And when you complete the transaction, are you going to start generating benefits for your company and unlocking different types of like marketing incentives and cloud credits? So making sure you're enrolled in all the right programs is extremely important before you start pushing for the marketplace, because otherwise just being there doesn't really help anybody.
And what about certifications and things like that? Did you take those certifications? Do you get engineering to take the certifications as well? Because obviously that's part of the process with AWS is commit to build on AWS, but then also you've got some associated certifications as well, right?
Yeah, so I personally had to go through some certifications which relate to joint go-to-market with AWS and co-selling with them. So it's more of internal partner enablement certification. But I think we didn't really do that from a technical perspective as a software company. I think those certification requirements are more heavy on the services side of things, where you basically need to have these before you can become a meaningful partner. Some of our software was already built on AWS, and I think that basically checked all the boxes, and we could go with that one.
Nice.
Yeah, so once you're enrolled in all of the right programs, I think then you need to revamp all of your paperwork. You want to make sure that operationally you as a company are able to transact with the marketplace and that you remove friction for your sellers. And I found that this is one of the key points, that no matter how much you invest into developing the motion and explaining the benefits and building all of the materials, if transacting through the marketplace creates frictions for your sellers, it defeats the whole purpose, and everybody's going to default back to transacting direct or through resellers. So we have to make sure that we support signature-free transactions, and that it's as easy as possible for the sellers to push deals through the marketplace, and do even more enablement and more hand-holding for them to really understand the motion. And I think at that stage, once you start delivering some transactions to the marketplace, people start paying attention to it, and then you can focus on more value-add activities, such as building some joint marketing planning, so we can start attending some of the events, do some joint webinars, publish some joint blog posts. You can also, at that stage, start pouring your accounts for propensity to buy from the marketplace. And I think that's another really important thing. You can get that information from Amazon, you can get it from Microsoft, and you can also get it from the third-party integrators. And I think what that gives you is focus, which are the customers that are likely to transact for the marketplace, so you can focus your proactive co-selling efforts to those accounts.
And so during that growth, which is incredible, right? From 1 to 10 million in 2 years, what would you tell Nikolay at the start of that journey after the 2 years? What would you go back and say, hey, stop, Nikolay, this is what you need to do now? What's that one learning that you could give?
It sounds in hindsight, it sounds very obvious now, but don't try to get everybody on board. You will waste your energy. I think you need to focus on a couple of people who actually believe in this and see the value in it, and their success is going to pull everybody else once you start developing the motion. If you try to convince everybody that this makes sense, first of all, no chance you can do that. There's just people who will never be on board with it. And secondly, you will spread yourself too thin, and you will not be able to focus on where you could actually make impact.
Yeah, and I guess fast forward onto NA10, because you're there now. And I know that's something that you're adopting, is finding that champion, right? That sales champion, and really doubling down, either as from a management level, but also the individual sales level. So the thing that you really spiked my interest, and I think it's going to spike a lot of people's interest, was you showed me a score of 75 on the ACE registration, and then literally hit 80 a week later by doing a number of things within the ACE fields. And just for context, some experienced alliance leaders on the show, including the GOAT himself, Michael Musselman, have openly talked about scoring well below that, like literally 40 on their own registrations. So what do you think that gap is actually measuring? And practically, what's the one mapping decision you made that had the biggest effect on the score?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a pretty new capability. So I'm still also learning on what the actual best practice on this is. But I suppose anytime that you want to register an opportunity for co-sale, you need to have 3 things readily available. An opportunity overview, including the problem that you solve. You need to have a full metric qualification, and you need to have clear asks for the cloud provider. Without these 3 things, I feel like you're probably not ready to engage into a meaningful co-sale discussion with them. When I dumped that information into ACE, I was getting like scores of 20, 15, 25, maybe 35 on some of them. I guess the most impactful and meaningful thing which I did was that ACE now gives you feedback. Okay, you need to change this and you need to change this, and that's probably going to make the opportunity better. I started distilling that feedback backwards into a cloud skill, and in the journey of going in an opportunity from a score of 15 to a score of 75. And that took like probably 10 to 15 iterations on the way you present the information. And it's bits and pieces, like you increase it by 5 points here and 10 points there. And I think after 15 to 20 iterations, I was feeding the whole thing into Claude, and I was saying, okay, so this is what I've changed now, and this is the score that I got, and this is the next bit of feedback that I'm getting. Iterate on that more and more. And I think the final output was that obviously you have 2,000 characters to be given context about an opportunity with AWS. You want to split that into 5 equally sized paragraphs, and you need to cover the opportunity overview. What does it mean in customers' terms? What are the actual measurements, the line of business outcomes that you're achieving by implementing your solution successfully in their context? What's the evaluation criteria? What are the asks for AWS? And what is the budget authority? By following this framework, I'm now consistently getting an initial score of 55, 65, and then you do a couple of tweaks. Like for the last 5 opportunities I've registered, I've gotten 55 on all of them from the first try. Then you do a couple of tweaks, you add the next steps, got the key contact, and that boosts it to 65. But yeah, I think the most meaningful thing which I did was to distill the feedback into a cloud skill. And now basically I can just put the account, and I'm giving my feedback to the cloud skill as well, where I say, I don't want you to say this, but we should maybe focus on this. And I keep iterating, and I'm just uploading the account plan for a certain account into the cloud skill. It just gives me the whole thing. I paste it, and more often than not, we get a good result.
Wow. Okay. So for the people who don't have the Claude skill, what is that one thing you would say? Keep it under the characters, touch on those key areas, and put the output as you just described, right? Is that?
Oh, yes. Have the customer key contact, make sure to fill the next steps, put the right stage, and take full advantage of the 2000 characters block that you have for the opportunity description. And in there, you want to put those 5 things: the opportunity overview, what does it mean in customers' term, what's the evaluation criteria, what are the asks for AWS, and what's the budget authority.
Nice. Nice. I'm impressed. Very impressed.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions. I think we might have to get you on Pecan community as well to talk about this. But yeah, it's always interesting, right?
Happy to share the skill as well.
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing. But this third question I have, right? You flagged something to me that I don't think has ever been discussed publicly on this show. And you registered an opportunity, you got the highest quality score ever. ACE assigned it to the partner-led motion instead of putting it into an AWS account manager for a major all-in AWS digital native customer. So what's your honest theory for why that happened? And what does it tell you about what the score is actually optimizing for?
Yes, and to be precise here, the score was 85.
Wow.
For an account which we know is an all-in AWS SaaS company. So I found that really odd. And the first thing that this told me is that the opportunity score measures for completeness of record and isn't necessarily correlated to the co-selling motion to which it gets assigned. The first presumption under which I operated is that maybe the customer is under some very heavy NDA with AWS, and maybe they've explicitly told them, we do not want to be co-sold into the account. We do not want any of the intel associated with us to be shared with anybody else.
Yeah.
I was then actually told that the account doesn't have a dedicated sales manager associated with them, but rather they have like a team of a number of indirect sales works with them, and none of them has decided to pull the opportunity. We had to do some manual adjustments, and in the end, we got introduced to it because it just didn't make sense. This score tells us that this is a thing we should be focusing on, but it was opening that not always the highest scored opportunity is going to get the most attention from AWS.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that's useful to know for the people who are pushing for those scores and then get crickets or get silence from AWS. So that's a good experience to have. The last question I have for you, and it's associated with your growth in previous company, and then also the conversation we had offline before we started this, which was the attribution challenge. And there's always a skeptical response from people around Marketplace, which is when I have a look at a number, let's say the 10 million number, how much of it is Marketplace actually accelerating or unlocking deals that wouldn't have happened otherwise? So we talk about the partner sourced and the partner influenced. So how do you see the difference, and how would you prove to a CFO who doesn't take that number at face value?
That's the $1 million question that everybody's trying to answer. And I wish I had a complete answer to this. But what I know is that in the context of my previous company, I would say that those kind of 10 million which transacted in the marketplace for that same time period, it would have probably been about 8.5 if they weren't transacting through the marketplace. So I would say the marketplace motion contributed to about 1.5 million of that revenue. And it's not net new business, but it acted as a revenue multiplier. We were able to close a couple of opportunities of multi-year opportunities because the customer was buying to the marketplace and was burning down their cloud commit. It was easier for them to make that decision to sign with us for a larger transaction. We also got a couple of decent leads from the marketplace, but for the majority of the cases, I think the marketplace acted as a revenue multiplier rather than a net new business generation. For the rest, I think it still helped a lot because we were able to close a lot of the deals faster. We met our customers where they are. And because it's not a tangible thing, people often underestimate this. But I think it actually helps a lot with preventing attrition in the long run, because you do sell your solutions against a budget that they have already pre-committed, and you do sell it to them in a way which is very convenient and easy to govern. So you give them at least a couple of less reasons to scratch you off their vendor list in the long run.
Yeah, you remove those roadblocks, right? I think it speeds up. I've certainly had numbers, and Michael and I talk about the average sales cycle and how you can, if you monitor the different stages of the sales cycle, you'll actually see the legal and procurement piece actually be compressed when you use Marketplace. I have another question for you just off the back of that. If you are speaking to a CFO or a CRO, what's the ideal way that you should be measured? Because obviously you're influencing a lot. Should you be an overlay and you should have let's say the whole sales team's number or a portion of the whole sales team's number? Or should you, in some cases, what I've seen is be targeted on a Marketplace sourced number, which a lot of partner alliance leads go, oh, because it's more influence. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it probably needs to be a weighted target, which includes a few components. I think a cloud alliance lead should be measured on the overall marketplace build sales that the company generates. And I think apart from that, there should be also pieces which relate to much net new business you can generate and influence through the whole cloud go-to-market motion. And that's not just leads being generated from the marketplace. It's not just leads being introduced to us by cloud sellers. It's not just leads being generated through joint webinars and events that we do with the hyperscalers. It's a mix of all of these things, and that can be originated and influenced pipeline through the whole motion that we built. So I think those two things are probably the key components of what a cloud alliance leader should be measured on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know that people are going to be really interested in how you achieve 85 and that's Claude's skill as well. I'm sure we'll try and give a link to that, or we'll see how we can get access to that anyway. But Nikolay, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.